Well, good evening. I'm just sitting here in the messy shop just trying to get my truck back together. You can see I'm putting a new axle housing on the front. Some CMS action going on. But I just want to kind of go over the CKRC Overland Treks event that happened at Davis Regional Park. It was a really, really fun event. Really chill time. We had a great time there. So I got to thank CKRC for hosting the event, and actually the rangers for the park for working with CKRC to actually have it happen. I'm just going to sit here and talk for a minute as I kind of put this truck back together. I'll be throwing in some pictures and talking about the event itself. So I'll be right back. Well, I'm back right here. Just throwing in some screws, kind of finishing up. Anyways, so the Overland Trek event was a really fun event to attend. Not only because of the time of the year, it was very, very good weather. A little cold. We were kind of dreading some of the recent wet weather we've had, hoping that it wouldn't rain on us and we'd have to worry about flash flooding and whatnot. But it was a really, really great time. Really relaxed day, light wind. As for the trails themselves, they're actually pretty gentle walking trails. A lot of people, really accessible. There's bridges over all the creeks. Um, and not only were there walking bridges over the creeks, but there were also bridges built specifically for the event to cross the bridges with your vehicles. So that was actually kind of a really cool thing also. Requirements for vehicles. It really wasn't a intensive hardcore trail for most scale rigs that were out there. Now, I did start with this truck, and I kind of slapped it together with whatever parts I could muster. And unfortunately, I had a ready to run servo in here, and it lasted about. Well, actually, the servo itself lasted quite a while. I actually don't have it anymore. I was able to give it back to a friend. But the servo saver snapped. I had actually put a servo saver on it to keep it from breaking the servo, and of all things, the servo saver snapped. So that kind of took this truck out of the running. I ended up taking out, you see over here, creature truck is sitting over there. Actually took it out and just blasted the trails really fast, took some pictures. Just kind of had a, walk around time, played in the water a little bit, and visited with everybody. So as for the requirements for the event, for your rig, most people who put on events that have water present, they will tell you that waterproofing isn't necessarily a requirement. You don't have to take the gates that have water in them. Now, it does make for a more fun time to actually take those gates, but in some cases the water isn't necessarily scale. I mean, a lot of rigs can take up to, tire height water, but when water starts going over your hood and kind of putting your electronics in jeopardy, you usually don't want to do that. This one, there were a few gates that were optional that definitely were hardcore water gates. I know the creature got in pretty deep, where it was paddling, and it looked pretty awesome, and it was fun. But for scale, it definitely wasn't scale for most trail rigs that you'll find out there. I think they would have had, if they had not been waterproof, they would have been in jeopardy being in some of the bigger water gates that were there. But as for the trails themselves, again, it was an overland sort of a event to where you had to have, if this was the soft event, but for the most part, if you're competing, and this is as we were told by Dom, he actually had given us the rules for the competitors who will compete later on in the event itself. That you'll have to have certain scale items, just as you would on an overland trek. Extra water, tire, like a spare tire, tools, let's see, what else do we have on here? We have gas can, toolbox, sand ladders, or recovery rails, and all kinds of stuff on there. So some of those things were a requirement to a point. Now, anybody that wanted to come out and run the event just as a fun run, they're more than welcome. And as it was said, they're not going to restrict anybody from coming out and playing with their toy trucks, because that's what we're out there to do, play with our toy trucks. But as for competitors, all those things will count against you if you don't have them later on. Now, there was something that they called trail encounters. And as you go on a trail, you will run into an official who has a stack of cards. And in pulling those cards, you actually have a mishap with your truck, a scale mishap. Whether you, let's say, theoretically, your battery dies. You know, in your actual 1-1, you would have to get out and either have a charge box, a spare battery, or have somebody, you know, jump you and you figure out what the problem is, troubleshooting those issues. So if you have the scale item to deal with that, then you actually proceed with no time penalty. If you don't have the scale item, then your card would actually mark for a time penalty and not having that tool or item required to actually fix that problem on the trail in the Overland Trek aspect. So, what are some of the requirements for an event, or this specific Trail Trek event, the Overland Treks event CKRC is putting on? You know, basically what they're looking for is a 10 scale truck that can handle medium, mild, moderate obstacles, have enough battery power to do the entire course, some scale items. But, you know, honestly, to tell you the truth, you could come out with a bare bones, bone stock, ready to run, tent scale, trail truck, crawler, what have you, and compete at the level of a beginner and still finish in a respectable amount of time, not having all the scale items and only taking time penalties for the things you don't have, because they'll count against you in the trail encounters. But if you run a good, consistent time, you run fast enough to, you know, to get down the trail, to make it without, physically breaking yourself or your truck, and beat the time penalties that you accrue during the actual run, you know, you technically can compete with a bare bones truck. Now, that's not to say that it'll last. Everybody's had a ready to run truck. Some people have been extremely skillful and lucky enough to get these bare bones stock trucks for event after event after event with little to no issues. But some of us aren't exactly the best on the throttle, or some of us don't negotiate the obstacles as well as others. I know I've had a few dumb breaks just from trying to make it through an obstacle and pushing too hard or rolling too far, or, you know, something dumb usually happens. It's just a matter of time. But as for a competitor, having those scale items will help your time if you're actually going to compete. Now, as for non-competitors on the trail, they will ask that what's going to happen is when you have people who are out for the fun run, they will actually start after all of the trail trek or the Overland Trek competitors start. That way it gives the Overland competitors time to get down the trail, kind of get a bit of a head start, get a bit of a jump before all the big mass of fun runners come in. And it keeps them from getting snarled up in any type of choke point and not getting thrown off on their time. Also, while on the trail, if you have a competitor coming through, you're there for the fun run, but you have a competitor that's coming through and trying to keep a good time. Just as a courtesy, you'll be asked, you know, maybe just step aside or just hold up on your obstacle so a competitor can get through. In turn, not only do you get to see them operate with their competitor level trucks and skills, but you'll also have the time to figure out that obstacle as they take it. So it's kind of a benefit for these fun runners who come out just to kind of have fun on the trail, not thinking they're going to compete, but eventually kind of stepping up and saying, hey, I might want to do that because they see the skill involved or they see what's involved with their trucks. They might not be ready at the time that they're there, but later on they come in and say, hey, I'm ready now. And that's always more than welcome. It's always great to watch higher level drivers and trucks work. And that way you can actually go through later on and see these events more as fun than work. Playing with toy trucks should not be work. Why make it work? Make it fun. So let's see. We're going to go over what you can do with your truck to actually get it going for something like the Overland Trek scale event. Right now, I'm running pretty basic electronics. An old Axial AX2, or excuse me, AE2, with a I believe is that an AX3 radio right there? Actually running a Holmes 27 turn Torquemaster, and let's see here, ProTech, I think it's a 100T. It's a fairly decent torque servo, it's just a basic trail truck. And then a Castle BC also. Now you can see my battery cable poking through there. That's the unfortunate drawback to having my electronics mounted here in the back where you can't really see them, is having to try and route everything. So when I do run, yes, I have this big battery cable sticking through the cab, where my battery goes right here in the compartment. It just rests in there. It's a big hard pack. Just basic electronics, something that'll get you down the trail, but not consume a bunch of energy. Now that's usually a big thing. To be able to get up and go is one thing, but to actually make it down the trail is another. I have a lot of scale bits. You see the spare tire, gas can, fire extinguisher, my drink barrel, toolbox, recovery strap, sand ladders, and now I do need to get some bumpers for this. The plastic bumper that's on here actually hangs up quite a bit right in this area, and it's pretty rough. I can feel it now. It's actually it was pretty new off a deadbolt when I put this thing back together, and it's already beat up pretty good. What else do we have here? Whatever combination wheels and tires you're looking for. Usually what you want to do is get it looking as correct as you can with the body you're running. Now this is an old Wraith chassis. You can see in here there's some of the the plastic cagework still left from the Wraith chassis itself. And there's some steel cagework here also. And this is an old repurposed Rubicon windshield. And some plastic some spare plastic I used for the roof. Now, I've got to get some stuff tucked in. This dashboard is kind of poking out, but mostly it's just for scale look. We're getting there. It's just for the look. A little bit of ruggedness, a little bit of cool looking stuff. But, a basic truck like this. Now, the time penalties that will mostly happen because you won't have a few of these scale items. You notice I don't have any jumper cable, so if I draw one of the trail encounter cars where I have a dead battery, I'll be in for a time penalty because I don't have a jumper cable or a spare battery or one of the jump boxes. I also don't have technically water. Now I could say that's water, but it's just a drink barrel. Now, as for drinking water, I do have on the seat or on the floor here some cans of soda and whatnot and some ice. Now I do have some loose tools to go with my toolbox just sitting on the seat there. And then look, I even have a spare scale axle sitting there. You can always put your spare actual parts on your truck, though if you roll over and you lose those parts, then you'll be, missing those parts down the way. Now, in the the Overland Treks rules, this gas can is pretty pivotal, as your spare battery that you carry counts as this can right here. If you don't have that can, you don't have a spare battery. If you don't have the tools, you don't carry spare tools. If you don't have water, well, I'm pretty sure they won't say you can't carry water, but if you're carrying water on you, you should have somewhere on your rig some water to carry for your rig. In a 1-1 Overland situation, you'd have spare water for your truck and coolant, just in case something happens down the road. You get a pinhole in, your radiator, or one of your hoses breaks, you have to have spare water. So that's kind of just a short overview. There's a lot of different aspects you can take that go with this. But, again, you can compete with a bare-bones truck and not have a terrible time at this thing, and even be a competitor. If you have a great time and only accrue some time penalties because you're missing some trail goods, you could actually place. It's a possibility. So just think about what you would need on an actual 1-1 trail and consider putting that on your trail rig. Well, that's basically the overview I have for the Overland Treks scale event from CKRC. They're not trying to beat up your truck with these events. It's more of a scale way to get your truck down the trail, have a little fun, have a little bit of competition involved, and kind of test the mettle of your truck. And kind of see how much better you can make your truck or your driving skill, and also have fun doing it. It's a matter of just getting out there, just like all of us have done, finding these trails, finding people to run the trails with, comparing your rigs to other rigs, because sometimes that's what it takes to really get out there and understand what your truck is or isn't doing. And trust me, once you get your truck down well enough, it's a matter of putting a battery in it and running, and then coming home and maybe spraying it down really quick if it got wet and leaving it. I mean, this truck, aside from some steering issues, I've had no other problems with this truck in the last month or so that I've put it back together. It's had many iterations. This is probably the 4th iteration of this truck, from different axles to the chassis change to the changing the cage on the top, which is a huge difference from the plastic top in weight and handling. But, this has always been a reliable truck, just like the Creature truck. I mean, I just kind of grab it and go. I rarely go and take it apart and fiddle with it. There's really no need to do that once you get your truck down enough to really get out there and play. So, that's it, and I will catch you guys later.